Hello, and welcome to Anime Initiative, comic books' best and only place where we talk all things anime, manga, webtoons, and more. My name is Megan Peters, and I am the host of this show alongside with my good friends and coworkers, Evan Valentine and Nick Valdez. How
Hey
are we?
everybody. Howdy everybody.
For those who I'm sure are listening and follow all things kind of nerdy, you will know that San Diego Comic-Con has come, it has gone, and the three of us, I feel like, are in kind of our post-Comic-Con haze of just, general coverage of the event. More and more, year after year, animation and anime just continue to kind of infiltrate and kind of like dominate that space. I was at home on one of my shifts off. I have a Amazon Fire TV and the like Amazon promotion for San Diego Comic-Con. None of it was comic book stuff. It was a cosplayer from of an anime, and then it was like the Kotobukiya booth at the event with a bunch of anime figures. And I was like, well, I wouldn't have seen that a few years ago.
That's awesome.
It just proves, we're here. We're good to stay. We are beginning that assimilation essentially. But yes, if you couldn't tell, we're going to talk about some things from San Diego Comic-Con because again, we had a excellent showing of anime projects. I know Evan has to be freaking excited because we finally got a first look and release date for Junji Ito's Uzumaki. We also had a few other things announced. And in kind of the first half of our show, as we do a news rundown, just a little tease of what's coming. We're going to talk about the Olympics and Beyblade. And we're also going to talk about a new set of Dragon Balls that Nick Valdez has put quite a bit of research into. And in the second half of the show, I think us here at Comic Book, whether we like anime or not, are obsessed with Deadpool and Wolverine. We're going to kind of dive into Marvel's sordid history with anime and manga, for good, for worse. We're going to figure it out. And we're going to talk about whether or not the Marvel Cinematic Universe should or will dive into anime in the future. So we have a busy show. Let's kind of get started. We're obviously going to start with San Diego Comic-Con. Before we get into Uzumaki, I'm so sorry, Evan. I do have to shout out. We did get a season 3 update for My Adventures with Superman, one of our favorite kind of anime projects we talk about on this show. Nick, what did we learn?
Yes, so My Adventures with Superman season 3 is now in the works. According to Jake Wyatt and the rest of the producer team that were at the panel, they have already finished voice recording for episode 1 and are currently in the middle of writing about 4 or 5 episodes at the moment. So season 3 is chugging along for those who have been excited for when this new one will hit. Unfortunately, there is no release date or window as of yet, but teases to expect in the new season are a new version of Superboy, which is awesome. Like, this is Evan can also tell you about this too. My Adventures with Superman, they've been kind of planting seeds for the post Death of Superman arc in the comics, which is like super interesting because you've already had Hank Crenshaw, who's also been teased to return as a new villain, Cyborg Superman, which is also one of the many villains that they're kind of teasing for season 3. They've also said that Lex Luthor will be going bald as expected in the new season.
So
like, had to happen.
We appreciate a bald king.
Yes, and Supergirl will be an official part of the main group as teased by the end of season 2's finale.
To be totally honest with you.
Yes, like I'm excited for it. Like, it's we didn't get to talk about the finale when it happened because there's just been so much happening, but season 2 ended in like such a high point that like I also thought, like, if that were the finale, which I assume, like, watching it, you're like, oh, if you're that team, you got your ordered 2 seasons, you ended your story. It seemed like that. Like, it seemed like a finale. But now that they've got season 3, which apparently they found out about in February, like, they were told they were getting renewed back then. So I'm just excited to see more of this. I cannot wait. I can't wait to talk more Superman and see what all this means for this new take on it.
Yeah, it was great to see Superboy. They also showed an image of like the villains that had bald Lex Luthor. Sir Glean makes a great point. Bald Luther is the best. Originally in Silver Age Superman, the reason why Lex Luthor hated Superman was that he went bald because of an experiment gone wrong that was made that was messed up by Superman. But like My Adventures with Superman, seasons 1 and 2 were just fantastic. Just completely nailed the character. And as Nick said, they have already introduced John Henry Irons as Steel. They introduced Hank Henshaw, who will become the cyborg Superman, who, swinging back to Marvel, is actually like, he's kind of an evil version of Reed Richards, because that's how he becomes cyborg Superman. He goes on a trip with 3 of his family members who all become weird, twisted versions of the Fantastic Four, and they all die.
Nice.
But he doesn't. He becomes like a computer program.
And
also
he gets stuck in like the cyberspace area, right? And this is how he eventually gets like the cyborg body, right? Right. Okay.
jumps into technology that latches onto a clone body of Superman. Comic books, everybody, you gotta love them. And also, Brainiac does mention the Eradicator at the end of season 2. The Eradicator, of course, is one of the 4 Supermen from the Reign of Supermen, who is a Superman who wears cool yellow glasses, and he's not afraid to kill criminals. That is his big claim to fame. Those all work very well. I'm super excited. And also, maybe, just maybe, and I had a theory. I was talking with Nick about this. There is a very large fellow who is on the villains poster, who is, nobody knows who he is. I think that's a new take on Doomsday. I think that would kind of out the Death of Superman plot line and everything. That would kind of work pretty well. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, no, I would dig it, because if you're doing like the around the Death of Superman arc, you kind of have to. I don't know if you have to do the Death of Superman, but you kind of have to do the Death of Superman, right? Like, it's like you can't really start the clone saga essentially without getting rid of your prime Superman. And I don't know, like, it's tough because this Superman has been through so much already, and he's it's so early in his career that like a death might be too soon. But I also trust this team. Like these first 2 seasons have basically said, hey, we very much understand Superman, and have offered a fresh and anime inspired take. Like that little dash of anime, especially in like I think it was like episode 9, the penultimate episode where Lois and Clark were escaping from the Black Mercy, and it was like you got the theme music behind it, and it was basically like, oh, it was very power of friendship, power of love. Like, you can't stand in our way. We're gonna break through the ceiling, and perfect stuff. I can't wait to see where this is going. And if that means Doomsday, let's do it.
Yeah, sure. A new take on him. That's one of the things that this series has really done really well, is it takes the core of what makes Superman work while injecting a lot of new interesting angles into it. There's like a lot of new stuff that they've added that has also worked really well. So like, they will do the impossible. They will give Doomsday a character arc. I can see it. I can see it happening in my mind's eye.
I'm here for it. Honestly, I'm here for it. Well, we will circle back to some conversation about superheroes and anime with my adventures with Superman shortly, but we have other things to talk about for San Diego Comic-Con. Now the time has come, Evan. Uzumaki, we have a release date, we have a trailer. Junji Ito is finally going to have justice done. Give me the scoop. What's going on with this series?
So to start, it was very funny when Megan, behind the scenes, we have a Slack channel where we talk about a lot of this stuff, and Megan sent the trailer and goes, "This is horrifying," and I just responded with, "Yes, welcome to Junji Ito. Everything he does is the most terrifying, scariest thing you've ever seen." So for those who might not know, Junji Ito, the master of horror, has been working in the manga world for decades, and his history with anime adaptations has been very hit or miss. And for the most part, you really want to focus on the latter, because there have been a lot of misses. When Adult Swim initially announced that they would be partnering with Production IG, who has worked on series such as Haikyuu, Kaiju Number 8, Heavenly Delusion, and a number of other things. Junji Ito's Uzumaki was originally announced in 2021. So we have been waiting for years to see this one. It was delayed initially thanks to the coronavirus pandemic, which, I mean, understandable. And then it ran into some other technical difficulties that they talked about. And so everybody was just kind of waiting. It had been indefinitely postponed. But now, finally, we have a release date. The first episode will be arriving on September 28th. At, I believe it's 12:30 on Adult Swim.
Yes.
Then the next day, it will arrive on Max for you to stream. It will be 4 episodes. Each episode, I believe, will be about 22 minutes. Some folks, I know that when folks had originally heard that, they were kind of wondering, okay, like, is that enough time to cover the entirety of it? Well, maybe, but the good thing about Uzumaki is that a lot of it is in a structure that's, while it is an overarching story, there are a lot of things that can kind of be considered an anthology style. Right. So there are bits and pieces that they might be able to like kind of move away from. Like, hopefully they're able to fit everything in. But another big thing, the reason why this is so touted as being an amazing series is that it looks to be the first anime adaptation that really gets Junji Ito's art style done right. People have been waiting forever to see if an anime series can do his art style right, and this one looks like it can from everything that we've seen so far.
Seeing it in motion is one thing entirely, right? Like that's the thing. Like we've been, like Evan said, we've been seeing teasers for this since it was announced in like 2018 or whatever like that it was. But every new teaser has been showing just a little bit more. But this final trailer, like this actual trailer showing you like the shading, the amount of care has been put into like a fine line detail, that goes to show you that's like, wow, like they really have been paying attention to every single little detail. And then seeing it move, that's just like so Uzumaki, right? There's a lot of visual stuff that like you kind of I don't know, it's almost content warning kind of adjacent to where it's like, you have to be for what you're going to see, because like Megan said, it's terrifying, and there's some visuals in the actual manga that like I don't know how we're going to react to seeing it move.
Yeah,
it's going to be rough.
There's I mean, obviously, when you take something from a kind of static visual picture format and bring in motion, sound, pacing, tempo, I mean, there's so many variables there that can get lost in translation, especially with somebody of Junji Ito's, talent and kind of reputation. I mean, he is, for people who are unfamiliar with, the prestige of Junji Ito, I mean, it is not a far cry way to call him like the Stephen King of manga. I mean, with horror and body horror. I mean, he is that revered in terms of kind of artistic, creation. To see the movement finally put into Uzumaki, one, it looks gorgeous, but two, I've seen some really interesting comparisons of people who have compared like the first little like pieces of footage and like stills that we got, comparing them to what we've seen in this most recent trailer. And like they have gone under, some really subtle but very important, makeovers that make it even more true to what Junji Ito created with Uzumaki, back in the 90s. So I am thrilled. I know a lot of people on the podcast here, we have made, the joke many times. Well, where's Uzumaki? We have made that joke many times, but it will be all worth it in the end if we finally get a quality adaptation of a Junji Ito story, especially one like Uzumaki that is so revered. I'm not ready to see it. It's gonna scare me so bad. I love reading his work, like reading his Frankenstein adaptation is just immaculate.
Yeah.
But man, there's something about his art that makes my skin itch.
Yeah,
it's very
private. So I'm really scared for an anime to do that to me.
Yeah, I might have to watch it during the day. Like it might
like hold Squishmallow. It's gonna have to be a whole ordeal.
It's very funny because Junji Ito in real life is like the nicest, most quiet person.
Oh, he's like the cutest dude in the world.
He's like, I love my cats. and I love creating stories about my cats,
And
which he
did,
does.
like,
And he
famously
did.
did do one, about his cat, and it's like the creepiest thing ever, but it's like very, very like normal-esque things, right? It's like, oh, my
Yeah.
cat jumped at me, but it's like leaping in his art, and it's very creepy
Looks
looking.
terrifying. It still looks
Yes,
terrifying.
yes. So, and for those wondering, there will be an English dub release as well. This will
Yeah.
also be available for streaming with Max, and there will also be, if you want to see it on Adult Swim, there will be an encore broadcast for the dub a couple of days later. So, but first it's premiering with Toonami in Japanese with English subtitles. So, like, that's going to be awesome. We've been seeing that increase more in the last year or so with like Ninja Kamui, and then we'll get it with Rick and Morty the anime, and now Uzumaki, and it's pretty dope. Like, seeing English subtitles on TV, can't lie.
Speaking of big premieres that are coming out, we had a little bit of a tease that this was coming, but San Diego Comic-Con did confirm one of the strangest premises of a Shonen Jump series. Rooster Fighter is getting an anime. I have a lot of questions and I have very few answers. My initial impression was yes, this is yes. I'm good with this. What did y'all think? Because Rooster Fighter, for those who do not know, essentially this series basically follows a rooster that is wandering this kind of like post-apocalyptic Japan after all of these weird mutant demons inspired by like humanity's worst fears and heightened emotions like taking over the globe. This just absolutely jacked rooster comes out and is like, yeah, I'm gonna be the savior of the world, and I'm gonna fight all these demons because he's looking for a specific demon that killed his sister. That's Rooster Fighter. And if for those who are not watching this live and watching the trailer, I need you to just like look up this trailer real quick, because when I'm talking about a rooster, I'm not talking like a human that looks like a rooster. I'm talking about like an actual rooster.
An actual rooster.
It is an actual bird. KFC is shaking in its boots. I need to know, what do y'all think about this?
I mean, let's go. Like, that's the thing. Like, it was announced as a team up between Viz Media and Adult Swim, and if that doesn't just make all the sense in the world, right? Like, this is it's a perfect marriage.
Like Adult Swim possible series.
Yes, like, it's a perfect marriage. I can't wait to see when this show like hits screens. This is going to be it. It could be the next best thing, like the next big thing, right? Like, I know we say this all the time about like what could hit and what couldn't, but this one seems like it's got everything. And with Adult Swim, that's exactly the perfect audience for us to like watch and see weird stuff and like weird ideas that like go the extra mile. And the trailer is already looking great. It's CG animation, but at the same time, like, it looks good, as Evans talked about in the past with the likes of like Trigun Stampede and Land of the Lustrous and stuff. CG anime is not exactly a bad thing anymore. And you look at this and you're like, yeah, this could be huge.
I think that
the obvious question is when do we get the Rooster Fighter crossover with Robot Chicken?
I mean,
that's a possibility.
It is a possibility. Like, we could very much. We could very much see a promo of like when Rooster Fighter premieres, we could see a Robot Chicken-esque promo stop motion. So like it could happen. Like, this is all on the table.
you know that I love my weird big anime stuff. And the first time like I didn't know a lot about this. I saw like imagery from the manga, via osmosis on like social media and everything, but like seeing this trailer, it just screams first season One Punch Man, which is about like one of the highest compliments you can give something like this. So I can't wait to see this rooster beat up giant monsters.
Yeah, it's gonna be rad.
Looks fantastic.
I mean, it's all in the name. It's a rooster. It fights. There's demons. It looks epic. We will be tuning in. So, and to kind of wrap up some of our biggest San Diego Comic-Con updates, we did get an update on Lazarus. The series has revived. We finally got an update on it. For those who are not aware, this is a anime project that's being worked on with the Adult Swim, the Toonami team that is directed by Shinichiro Watanabe, who is the director of Cowboy Bebop, Samurai Champloo, Space Dandy, all of these great series. Several years ago, Lazarus was announced as kind of his next original project, and we never heard about it again. But now we do know that it is officially going to be coming out in 2025. So, we can breathe a sigh of relief. We know it's coming. It's not coming this year, though. So we have a few months to decompress and look forward, to things like Uzumaki instead. But yeah, Lazarus is still going forward. Shinichiro Watanabe is still working on it with the team at Mappa, and I believe Sola Entertainment are the two the two main production animation houses behind the project. So if you, like myself, are a big fan of the director of Cowboy Bebop and will follow him to the ends of the earth, you have this to look forward to. So with all that said, San Diego Comic-Con was incredibly busy, but other things did happen in the anime space. This news bit actually came out a little bit ago, but we wanted to talk about it once the Olympics actually began. And you know what?
Yes.
Guess what? The Olympics have started. They are here. The opening ceremony went down, and I have religiously been watching the volleyball stuff. I recently finished watching Haikyuu for the third time. It's really bad. I know everything about volleyball now. That's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about Beyblade. No one expected this one. All right, so we have to set the stage for this. Essentially, Metro UK was given a kind of in-depth walkthrough of Takara Tomy, who is the company that kind of is the parent company of the Beyblade franchise. For those who do not know, Beyblade is essentially the kind of anime about the spinning top toys that you would, let it rip. All of those great anime memes, that's the Beyblade we're talking about. Metro UK was able to kind of go through and do an in-depth feature with several of the executives behind the Beyblade franchise. And it was there where they talked with designer Kenji Horikoshi, who talked about kind of the recent rise and surge of competitive Beyblade. And it was there that Horikoshi-san admitted that, Takara Tomy is not going to say no to pitching Beyblade for a future Olympic sport categorization. I first laughed at this. I thought there was no way this would ever happen. But when I went to Anime Expo, one of the biggest booths in the exhibition hall was for Beyblade X. And there was constantly a line of people trying to get in to play Beyblade. Then there was also kind of pop-up tournaments at San Diego Comic-Con that were packed. I don't know if I'm just that removed from the situation, but Beyblade is back, right? That's kind of what I'm getting.
Yeah, it's a mix of factors, right? We've talked about this actually when we talked about what makes a good anime, what helps it boom, and part of that is nostalgia. So not only is Beyblade, we're in that very big nostalgic boom of liking anime from as an old head speaking, liking anime from my youth, and Beyblade was one of them. It was one of the many here's a toy anime that we've seen, right? And alongside Metabots and Pokemon and stuff like that. But on top of that, Beyblade also has never slowed down. It literally has just continued releasing sequels. It's like Yu-Gi-Oh! In that there have been so many iterations from the ones we might recognize, but it's not like Yu-Gi-Oh! In the fact that no one's really paying attention to them outside of Japan. But now it's getting to the point where the nostalgia is helping to carry it. The fact that toy stores aren't really around anymore, so you want that, you want a physical thing to mess with, and it's all building to this point where this new apex of I wouldn't mind seeing Beyblade in the Olympics. If we can have breakdancing and if we can have all these other things, why not? Why not? I guess you'd start out small though. You need full organized Beyblade competitions on the level of a sport, and then you can move on from there. But baby steps first. But I'd take it.
My question is, how do you train in Beyblade? What?
A lot of it comes down to picking the right apparatus and training with that apparatus, which in, in sports, and especially in competitive levels like the Olympics, I mean, there are athletes using apparatuses all the time. I mean, you look at things, as something, as big of an apparatus as like a bobsled versus something like using an apparatus to play, the ball to play volleyball, going back to
Mm.
Haikyuu, looking at something like Beyblade, to me, it doesn't feel quite so dissimilar as something like skateboarding. Obviously, with
Mhm.
skateboarding, you're using more of your entire body to produce tricks and be able to, like, use balance and perspective to do things. But with Beyblade, depending on your level of competition, I mean, how ripped you are does matter when you're letting it rip. I'm just saying. I mean, it's got to be completely we just got to be open with that. And I mean, this year we did get, there are a lot of things in the world that qualify sports, whether you want to make fun of them or not. Breakdancing was added to the Olympic roster this year, which is very overdue. I mean, some of the
Yeah.
stuff that they're doing is insane. And in 2020, for the Olympics, well, that got postponed, that were supposed to be debuting skateboarding, surfing, sports climbing. The Olympics are constantly in a conversation of modernizing depending on what the sports community looks like. There's been the continued conversation about having esports in the Olympics, which again
Mm.
is something, very similar to the fact in Beyblade, you're using an apparatus, but you're still training, you're still strategizing. It's got the whole thing packaged together. So something like esports can make a really good, compelling argument to be joining the Olympics moving forward. I feel like there's really nothing that could kind of get in
I
Beyblade's
mean,
way, to be totally
yeah,
honest.
yeah.
I just so badly want to see just like a competitive like Beyblade arena, like full music. I want like the announcers from like the anime to show up. Like I want the whole 9 yards.
I know,
Yo,
I know it's,
just
I know it's Yu-Gi-Oh, but man, I would love it if we got U.S. representatives who dressed up like Bandit Keith. Like, come on,
Oh my
man.
gosh.
Like the
yeah, like just as during Olympics you can wake up at like 3 a.m. and get really into fencing from like Paraguay, but
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
imagine you wake up at 3 a.m. and all of a sudden you're watching like the Hungarian Beyblade team like like
I mean,
compete.
just watching them rip the floor up. Here's the thing that
Yeah.
I'll say, and I mean, it's not probably surprising as I'm the host of an anime podcast, but all of the Olympic sports that I watch because I watched a sports anime first. I mean, Yuri on Ice, I started watching in the Winter Olympics, figure skating. Now I'm super into it. Haikyuu in volleyball, slam dunk in basketball. Most sports that I'm aware of are because of an anime. So I feel like the fact that Beyblade, they're at least open to the idea. Who knows about, the Olympic, International Committee? I don't care about them. But the fact that Beyblade wants it means I want it for them.
Yeah.
That's all I know. That's all I know. So before we wrap up this news rundown, we did mention it in the teaser of this episode. Dragon Ball, as we know, has a new show coming out this fall, Dragon Ball Daima. We've talked about its trailer before, but Nick Valdez is an absolute eagle-eyed fan, notices the smallest of details, and he pinged me the other day and was like, wait, I think there's some new Dragon Balls in this trailer. And I was like, nah, man, that can't be true. And it actually is true. There's totally some new Dragon Balls that are appearing in Dragon Ball
There they are.
Daima, and I need Nick to explain the situation to me ASAP.
Yeah, so as the nature of our job, just setting the table here just for a second, as the nature of our job, we see these trailers like a million times just for whatever reason. Like we are combing through these things, and this is as fans and also like to deliver the news. Like, okay, what have we missed? And on like the 50th watch through, I saw the Dragon Balls looping again, but they stood out to me this time because they're blue. So and if you watch the teaser released before this, there's a shot of like King Kai's not King Kai, I'm so sorry, but like the Dende's tower, you see blue lights scattering from that. So I'm so interested in what this means because, you know, the Shenron we've seen is very much the same original golden light summoning Shenron. It's the green Shenron with the orange Dragon Ball lights. But seeing them kind of float around as blue in this case with blue lights, it's so interesting because yes, it could here they are again. If you're watching the video feed, it could be just, you know, this could be totally off kilter. Oh, this is just a design thing they did. They're just blue, happen to be as they fly away. But it would be so much more interesting if Dragon Ball Daima was here with a new set of Dragon Balls. As in, just like how we've seen with Dragon Ball GT, you know, it's kicked off its grand tour with a new set of Dragon Balls. Dragon Ball Daima is teasing its own grand adventure. And what better way to send Goku out into space than to like follow a new set of blue Dragon Balls and to seek them out and to like reverse whatever's turned them all mini. And I'm so curious as to what this means. Like, I don't know, like what kind of power they can have, because we've seen so many different kinds of Dragon Balls in the series already. We've seen smaller ones from the manga, we've seen the huge ones from Namek, and I don't know. What do you two think about it?
So as soon as you showed me, you know, once you had pitched that there were probably new Dragon Balls, I know me and you immediately began investigating the situation, Nick, and we did find some old concept artwork for Dragon Ball GT, which did show the Dark Star Dragon Balls as blue. And so what I'm interested in is maybe we know that you know Dragon Ball Daima is going to have kind of, you know, these demonish characters, you know, very much like those we've seen before in things like Super Dragon Ball Heroes and Xenoverse. I'm really convinced at this point that some of those demons imbued some of their kind of demonic, you know, energy into perhaps even the Dragon Balls that we know from Earth, if not maybe an entirely new set of Dragon Balls from, you know, where the demons are from. And that is the situation where, you know, we get kind of the minified Goku, Piccolo, Vegeta.
Right.
That's what I want to see. And I feel like by having those new Dragon Balls, it really kind of sets up a great way for Goku to need to go on this adventure to recollect them all after whatever that wish is that's been made. Plus, if they're new Dragon Balls, they're not going to have an easy way to track them down. Like, Bulma's going to be like, well, sorry, guys, I can't help you with this one. So I feel like that kind of sets up an even better kind of situation. I will say the Black Star Dragon Ball arc of the Dragon Ball GT anime, as controversial as that show may be, you know, in present day, I thought that arc slapped. I really enjoyed that in Dragon Ball GT. So I am more than okay seeing little facets of that being kind of brought into Dragon Ball Daima, if that's the case, and, you know, making it to a degree canon, however canon there is in Dragon Ball these days. I'm super excited. Also, the pessimistic side of me says, oh, well, if they release new Dragon Balls, they can sell a lot of new merchandise, and that's going to bring up a lot of money. So
that's the key.
That's my
I thought that yeah, like I agree with both of what you had said about it. I think that one of the things that was so cool about the Black Star Dragon Balls that were introduced in Dragon Ball GT was the ticking clock element that was added to it. Because for those of you who remember GT, or if you're hearing about it for the first time somehow, if you're listening to this podcast, the idea is that on top of Goku being transformed into a kid, which Goku really didn't care about. He was like, "Oh, I'm a kid again."
So chill with it.
He's like, I don't really care. Like, it's fine. Whatever. I get some more years. But on top of that, the idea was that if they didn't gather them again within a year's time, the entire universe would blow up or something to that effect.
Yeah.
So I could see that again. Like, we'll see. Like, I loved part of the major selling points of GT was the idea of creating a new OG style Dragon Ball series that also had like mini Goku traveling around with Pan and Trunks. And so the idea, like, we'll see how him traveling around with the Kais kind of works. They've been in the background for a long time, so seeing them in the front and center again should be interesting. But yeah, there's a lot of unpredictability in that I'm kind of anxious to see.
Yeah, like Demon Dragon Balls means Demon Shenron is also on the table, and Demon
And that
Shenron
also
is
will
like
sell merchandise.
yes, like that's like one step away from Omega Shenron being canon. So if you follow me into the leapiest leaps that I'll ever take, like this, Dragon Ball Daima is getting us to Omega Shenron canon. Mark it here first, everybody.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna put a remind me for 1 year. We're gonna see if we're on that track still. So it looks like Dragon Ball Daima is pulling a little bit more from GT than we even than we suspected. So, we will see how this show shapes out. It is supposed to be going live in October. There's still a lot of time left before that premiere, but Dragon Ball Daima is definitely shaping up to be a little bit more interesting than I think I gave it credit for. So, with that said, we do have to pay for the show and hit a quick commercial break. But when we come back, we're going to talk about all things Deadpool, Wolverine, and anime as the future of the Marvel Universe shakes out. Stay tuned. And welcome back to Anime Initiative, the place at Comic Book to talk all things anime, manga, webtoons, and also apparently to talk about Marvel because, we are comicbook.com. For those who have somehow been living under a rock, you might not have heard, but Deadpool is back. Deadpool and Wolverine is finally in theaters. I've kept up with the Marvel Universe. Obviously, it is my job. I keep up with it quite strictly. The question of whether or not I've enjoyed doing that, that's here or there to say. I can definitely and firmly say I enjoyed watching Deadpool and Wolverine in theaters, upon its opening. And the question that has now popped up into my mind, into Evan and Nick's mind is there a place for anime moving forward in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? We ask this because the DC universe is doing it right now with some pretty solid success. We've already talked about my adventures with Superman in this episode as it's heading into season 3, and it is just pulling in insane praise and reviews. But we also have things like the Suicide Squad Isekai anime that is currently, in production with season 1 and airing. But we also have things like the Joker manga, where we have the Joker raising baby Batman that did incredibly well in Japan. So it is time to ask, is it time for the Marvel Cinematic Universe to bring in anime? Before we discuss this, though, we have to acknowledge the fact that the Marvel Universe does have anime in its history. I don't know how I feel about those series. I first have to ask, have you guys watched the Marvel anime projects?
Yes. Yeah, I have. To give folks some background on this really quickly. So Marvel teamed up with Studio Madhouse in 2010 on 4 different short anime series: X-Men, Blade, Iron Man, and Wolverine. And these, I have seen these. The best of them to watch is the X-Men one, I think. Like personal preference.
I enjoyed the Blade one, I will say.
Yeah, they're fine. I mean, that's you would expect, like from having Madhouse and Marvel on this, you would expect them to be like, oh, these are going to be amazing, and like they're fine, they do their job. But ultimately, the fact that so many people haven't seen these, and the fact that like they don't get talked about as much, is kind of the idea that like, oh well, maybe these didn't hit as hard as they could in terms of their impact. I think that like when these landed, these were still super early, but early-ish in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So like on top of these 4 series, there was also Future Avengers, which had nothing to do with these series. And while I've seen bits and pieces of those, that's more kind of presenting the idea of like, look, here's every Marvel character in existence as if they were Pokemon, kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
Like,
so
that's
the Future Avengers is from 2017, and that was in tandem with the Walt Disney company. So they did come together and, bring out kind of an Avengers kid-friendly series where you had like the entire kind of cast of the Marvel universe at hand that worked with some, original characters that were children. We saw this same kind of situation come to life in Marvel Disc Wars, which was released in 2014, and that was actually with Toei Animation and Marvel. As for the kind of original Marvel anime series that if people know about Marvel and anime, they probably think of that, where they tackled Iron Man, Blade, etc., etc. So I don't know if I have a controversial opinion on this. I think that the series are fine, and I think if they came out today, they would be incredibly successful. The problem is they came out in America, at least the English release was like in 2011, and it aired in like the middle of like no time on G4. So nobody was watching it. And then reruns of it, existed for a little bit on the Sci-Fi Channel. Nowadays, it is incredibly difficult to get, official access to these anime projects unless you have like a physical edition or anything like that. It's kind of living in licensing limbo. It's kind of like Marvel was like, all right, we made this with Madhouse and we're putting it deep in our closet for no one to ever see again, which I think is a mistake because I really don't think that the projects were that bad. I mean, sure, they might look a little outdated now, but it's been over 10 years. So of course that's going to be the case. If you're watching the live, you will see some very dramatic animation of Wolverine and Blade having an encounter, which, you watch Deadpool and Wolverine, you also saw that. So I guess technically the anime universe did it first. But looking at Marvel and anime, I think kind of the best way that I sum up that relationship is just miscommunication. Like there's a lot of miscommunication, not just between the brand of Marvel itself and the industry, the anime industry, but also miscommunication between the project and the fandom. Because again, I think a lot of it comes down to discussion of making a series accessible and making sure that, people can actually watch it, making sure that there is, a conversation and discussion around it. I mean, there's people in the comments right now saying that they would watch this show if they knew it existed. And the problem is that they didn't know it existed. I think in small degrees, we're starting to see that change just a little bit with Marvel. And the fact that, recently, I say recently, but, within the last 5 years or so, Marvel has embarked on projects with manga projects like Attack on Titan. We have entire publications like Deadpool Samurai or Spider-Man Fake Red that have come out that have gotten English releases as manga projects that have sold and been incredibly successful. The question is, should the Marvel Universe take that a step further and adopt those manga projects being released into something animated? My perspective on this is really complicated. And I feel like all 3 of us are going to have the same kind of feeling because I think it could be an excellent idea. I mean, I would love nothing more than to see like Studio Bones or like David Production do a Deadpool Samurai anime. I think there's a lot that could be done there, especially with the cameos that are present in that manga. I think it would be excellent. The other problem is, I think if that were to happen, the anime would most definitely stream on Hulu and Disney Plus, which would be concerning in terms of promotion there. Those 2 streaming services are massive. They still haven't gotten quite the method down for promoting their original anime series. And the other thing is, I kind of just want Marvel to slow down, and they start that to be clear. But we've had several years of just Marvel throwing content at us. And I would hate for something like a Deadpool Samurai or a Spider-Man Fake Red anime to get lost in that mess. I don't know. That's my perspective. What do you guys?
Well, the good news is like Marvel animation has already kind of moved in that direction of like separating itself from everything else in terms of its production and in terms of its like identity. It's now Marvel animation, you know, with the release of X-Men 97, and X-Men 97 is a good example, as in they will promote an animated series. Yes, this got the bump because of the nostalgia, but also one of the studios who worked on this, Studio Mir, has worked on anime releases in the past. And the same thing with Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, which is another project they have developing with Polygon Pictures, which has produced like the Godzilla trilogy on Netflix and big anime projects like that. So thankfully, Marvel as a whole is moving in that direction of like showcasing anime projects. It's just right now they need to form that bridge of like animation and anime. It's that, you know, it's kind of what we praise Netflix for, in that, like, you know, Netflix has their animated series like a Blue-Eyed Samurai, but you can also call it an anime even if it wants to be called an animated series. Or if like an animated series like Tomb Raider, you can call it an anime if Netflix wants to call it an anime. Like it's they like Marvel would need to make that kind of leap for themselves. And what would help is, like Megan said, like adapting some of these projects, like one of the cool manga that have been announced during Comic-Con is Ultraman Along Came a Spider-Man, which is an Ultraman Spider-Man team up. You know, they're already doing an Ultraman Avengers, but Ultraman Along Came a Spider-Man is specifically a manga featuring Doctor Doom, and Doctor Doom is everywhere now. You know, Doctor Doom is the biggest thing. So like, and Ultraman has been coming to life in all sorts of other ways. So like, imagine if that project were to be adapted. You have an Ultraman anime with Spider-Man and Doctor Doom and other Marvel things in it for Disney, but then it would also, like Megan said, it would hit that wall. It would all of these things would eventually hit that wall of like, well, Disney doesn't talk about their anime, so you know.
I think that Disney, ironically enough, already has a winning formula for this. Star Wars Visions is amazing. And it's in terms of, it was able to create an anthology series that created unique individual stories in the Star Wars universe that brought together just numerous animation and anime studios to create some amazing works. And so like, if you could just translate that immediately to Marvel, call something Marvel Visions, do the exact same thing, kind of ask a bunch of anime studios, hey, which character do you want to come up with? You can run the gamut on it. Like, we'll try to put this all together and everything. I think that would work really well. And I also wanted to promote, because I was actually like, obviously there's Deadpool Samurai and the idea that like you can have an anime adaptation of Deadpool meeting All Might. Like, you just print money right there. But on top of that, I loved Spider-Man Fake Red. I thought that was a fantastic, that wasn't just like a good Marvel manga. That was a fantastic Spider-Man story, just in a way that hasn't really been done before. And I think like if you were able to make an anime adaptation of that, that would work really well. But also at the end of the day, come on, Disney, you don't want Warner Brothers to eat your lunch on this. Warner Brothers is they're investing a lot into the anime world. We have Batman Ninja versus the Yakuza League is coming out. They've already like Wit Studio has said that like they would love to make more past Suicide Squad Isekai, which is already like done really well for them. I think that like a really good thing to do if they're not going to go the Marvel Visions route is to kind of like team up with a studio and kind of work on something specifically and release a statement that's like, we see how big anime is getting. We're going to put more money into it and we're going to work on creating some stuff. I totally agree with Megan's point earlier that, man, Marvel has done like a lot. Marvel continues to do, and they have done a lot. So maybe pulling back on some of this, but at the same time, they haven't done a lot of anime in general. So like, I think like doing a Visions thing would be kind of cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I
animation
think
is its own thing too, right? Like on top of like it would stand out already from like, yeah, you can say, oh, there are a million TV shows and movies, but an anime is an anime. Like you would instantly be like, oh yeah, it's its own thing. I don't count it as part of the others, you know?
Yeah, I mean, looking at something like Star Wars Visions, I mean, I think that's an excellent kind of, comparison. I feel like that is the very least that Marvel could do, in tandem with Disney and teaming up with, various anime studios for an anthology. I mean, I would give so much to see Studio Trigger do like an adaptation of like Penny Parker or something. Like
that'd be sick.
that would be so sick to see Studio Trigger get to like dive into that like mecha formula. So I think there is more than enough space and room and creativity to bring this to life. I think Marvel would absolutely benefit from it. I mean, if we're going to talk optics about this, essentially, I mean, if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you'll know the three of us have broken down just how popular and profitable anime has become. There are major investors, conglomerates. I mean, there's a lot of institutional funding being put into anime these days, in comparison to something that we've seen in the last 10 years. I mean, there's, the discussion of whether there's an anime bubble is for a different episode of this podcast. But in terms of what Marvel could do with anime and the fact that anime is reaching such a prime audience of, primarily young, the very lower end of millennials, Gen Z, to a degree, Gen Alpha now, this is the audience that brands and IPs want, because that is the younger audience that will then grow up with those IPs and stay with them and become, it's what we saw with Pokemon. Pokemon went with younger kids, and those kids have grown up with Pokemon and has turned the Pokemon company into one of the, top 10 most profitable licensors in the globe. So Marvel, as part of Walt Disney, doesn't have to worry about money so much because, it's Disney. But they do have to worry about their bottom line and creating a sustainable fandom. Anime, whether it's good or not, has become a prime place for people in the industry to look at and find a massive group of young fans that want creative storytelling. DC is already starting to go into that. They're doing it incredibly well, and I'm 100% on board with it. I think Marvel absolutely does need to get into the anime game. I mean, even things with, the X-Men 97 reboot that we've been getting right now. The team that has worked on bringing that series to life have said that anime was one of their biggest inspirations for bringing the revival to life. So we're starting to see those little bits and pieces. And I feel like the success of the X-Men 97 reboot will definitely give Marvel a little bit of like a kick in the pants to create this. Especially because we've talked about this before, and it's why I wanted to talk about this specific topic today. Suicide Squad is an excellent team for an anime because they're so reverent. They break the fourth wall. It's an easy storytelling sell for an anime. It's the same thing with Deadpool. Deadpool would make for a really good anime, and there's a lot of interest in that character. And the recent release of Deadpool and Wolverine has only heightened that interest. For something like Deadpool Samurai, Marvel already has a story ready to go. It's just a matter of putting together that project. So, I myself get kind of tired of Deadpool because he's everywhere all the time within the Marvel fandom. But even I have to admit that is the perfect starting place for kind of rebooted Marvel anime universe.
Yeah, there were reports of that Deadpool animated series that didn't quite work out. So like the idea is on the table, and a good first step for all of that is to license the series they already have. Like we mentioned on the show, the X-Men, Blade, Wolverine, and Iron Man series, those are lost in limbo because of how they were broadcast. They were released on like G4, and like it was like part of this weird like exclusive thing for TV, and because of that, they're all lost to time now. And you can watch them, but also you can't watch them, as much as I could say for that on this show. So it's just like, a good first step is to license those and say, hey, we have Marvel anime. Because promote the shows you have, build that further interest, connect the X-Men 97 series to it, and just be like, we have animation on Disney Plus, we have Marvel animation, and then you can show the anime, you can tie it in with like the classic 90s series, you can do all of that together. And then you do your Deadpool show. Then you do a new Blade. You do these projects that maybe don't get a full cinematic movie or Disney Plus TV series, but if they work as an anime, you'd be like, hey, let's do a cartoon. Let's do it. And then you can throw them in Secret Wars. You can cast somebody in live action, whoever.
I think that like going back to like DC in general, and this isn't an anime, but it is an animated series. One of the first things that James Gunn is starting off with is Creature Commandos, which is introducing not only like it's introducing this new phase of the DC universe, God and Monsters. It is also using the voice actors for that. To kind of bring them in later live action. David Harbour's Frankenstein. I can't remember his name. The guy who's playing Rick Flag is going to appear in Superman, the next Superman movie. And Marvel doing something similar to that. I think like Nick comes up with an amazing point of like, just have that anime series introduce a new character, like a lesser known one or something, and then throw them into Secret Wars. And that's kind of a good way to kind of promote that, as well as push like, Marvel can push the fact that they are entering into this quote unquote new medium, at least for them, and kind of introduce some new interesting ways for presenting stuff, because there are, I feel like, Deadpool works perfectly for an anime. I think there are a lot of characters that in Marvel's everybody get out your Marvel handbook for this one. I think a perfect character for this is Slapstick. If you guys don't know who that's a
name I've not heard in a while.
Slapstick is effectively Deadpool before Deadpool arrived. He's irreverent. He's a cartoon character. He has amazing powers and all that stuff. But that would be an example of a character that you could introduce via an anime format and kind of bring them into Secret Wars. I think that would kind of work well.
I love it as a strategy of being late to the party, but pretending you're there on time. It's like pretending that you started the party.
We've always done anime. It's always been.
As we kind of wrap this episode in conversation, because the three of us could talk Marvel for a very long time. Looking at what Marvel could do, I think everything Nick said to the T is correct. I think, bringing in better licensing, having connections between, 97 and the animation thing. I mean, I would, personally speaking, I would prefer, rather than to have a Marvel anime connect to the MCU so blatantly, I would just love to have an entirely separate universe, like kind of how DC, conducts with its animation stuff. I don't need that connection. Like full cap. I do not need the multiverse connection. I can have the anime stuff live on its own with Marvel. If for those doubting, whether this kind of storytelling works in an anime, I mean, we're about to have a massive power vacuum in terms of superheroes in anime, because My Hero Academia, at least the manga, is ending in like 5 days. So we're about to have, at least in the manga, a massive kind of gap in terms of desire for, wanting superheroes in anime. Of course, with the manga ending, that means the anime will also be ending before too long. And we have seen several Marvel archetypes do very well in My Hero Academia. I mean, you have characters, from the League of Villains like Twice, which were very, very specifically based on Deadpool. So, you can look at these things and see there is definitely a way that it can be done very successfully, because My Hero Academia is one of the biggest anime titles in the world. So Marvel, I won't say they've just been, twiddling their thumbs over it, but I will say that they are running the risk of coming too late into the party and then kind of looking, like they've got egg on their face. So I would really love to see, in the comics, Alex Green says Howard the Duck would be a great anime spiel. If we Rooster Fighter, we can get Howard the Duck as an anime.
It all loops around.
I say that with my whole chest. So hopefully we'll see something kind of come forward with Marvel. At this point, it just feels like a matter of time. We have franchises like Star Wars getting into it, major gaming franchises like Genshin Impact, things like the Terminator, Tomb Raider. It's inevitable. It's just a matter of when and how at this point. So, with that discussion out of the way, thank you for listening to our episode today. We obviously have a lot to talk about when it comes to anime and manga. So if you would like to continue the conversation with either of the hosts here on this podcast, you can find me on social media at Megan Peters ZB. Evan, where can they find you?
You can find me at EV Comedy for all your talking about slapstick. Yeah, baby.
Somebody needs to send Evan some fan art. Slapstick fan art. Throw that back in there. And Nick, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me at Valdizology and all the socials, as well as Pop Culture Social Call with Anna Rumor.
Awesome. If you loved this show, you can continue to listen to Anime Initiative every week as we go live on Tuesdays. We also have a backlog of episodes where we talk about some lovely anime topics, so please give it a listen. Otherwise, there are other podcast programs here at comicbook.com, including Comic Book Nation, Pull List, Quick Save, Phase Zero. A Wild Podcast has appeared. If you want nerdy news, we've got a podcast for you to listen to. So, beyond that, we will be back next week with even more wonderful anime news, including the finale of the My Hero Academia manga. So be sure to listen. And for now, thank you for joining the Anime Initiative. Talk to you soon.